right, InterMat is here with Cody Goodwin of the Des Moines Register. Thanks for joining us, Cody.
I'm glad to be here, man.
All right, so we haven't talked about this publicly, but something we have in the works at InterMat is setting up a set of conference correspondents, and Cody will be our correspondent for the Big Ten. So with that in mind, we're going to talk about the hiring of Mike Poeta, or maybe the elevation to head coach of Mike Poeta by Illinois. So, Cody, first of all, what does Mike Poeta bring to the table for Illinois as a head coach now?
Yeah, he brings experience, right? I mean, he's a former Illinois wrestler. He was there 05 to 09. Reached the NCAA finals a couple of times. Two-time Big Ten champ as well. So, this is a guy that's got experience winning on the mat, but also, experience from the coaching corner as well, right? After his competitive career, he started a very successful club there in the state of Illinois, went back to Champaign, and has been an assistant there, the top assistant there for the last few years under Jim Heffernan. So when Hef decided to step down, it seemed kind of natural that Mike Poeta would be considered one of the top contenders for the job. I think a lot of us maybe assumed that, he would be the top contender for the job, and there really wouldn't be much of a search involved. Things kind of evolved over the last few weeks to show that there was quite a bit of a search involved. They cast a little bit of a wide net, but Poeta was always part of that process. And turns out he ended up being the guy. So, he brings, in terms of, just being a successful athlete at Illinois, he's been there for the last few years under Heffernan. He's done a really good job in terms of recruiting, just bringing, guys in. This is a pretty young Illinois team that he's going to take over, at least in terms of, guys who are going to be in the starting lineup next year, or guys that we presume is going to be in the starting lineup next year. And he played a huge role in bringing a lot of those guys to Champaign. So, this is a guy that's got recruiting savvy. This is a guy that knows how to develop wrestlers of all ages. And, clearly the administration felt pretty comfortable with elevating him, promoting him from, top assistant to the guy in charge. So pretty exciting stuff there if you're Illinois fans for sure.
All right, and so you mentioned a little bit about the process. I know I heard about it on my own. It wasn't like your normal coaching search where, the job comes open and everybody kind of puts their resume in, shows their interest. From what I was told, it was a little bit different. Is that the same thing that you've heard as well?
Yeah, it was a unique process. I'm not going to claim to know every single detail, but there were four names that emerged, same four names that our buddy Willie Saylor kind of informed everybody about. And, Mike Poeta was on that list. Doug Schwab from Northern Iowa was on that list. Mark Branch from Wyoming on that list. And then Tony Ramos from North Carolina. So pretty wide net that they cast there, at least in terms of, finalists there. And then Poeta ended up being the guy. And I don't know that he was the guy first, right? Like first in line. I think there, we learned pretty quickly here that Doug Schwab was given an offer, or at least given an opportunity to take the job. And he decided to stay in Cedar Falls with Northern Iowa. And then it came out just a couple of days later that Poeta ended up being the guy that they went with. So, very interesting process indeed, especially just, the way it was maybe made public a little bit. I know that, just being here in Iowa, following all the Northern Iowa folks and people in and around that program, very excited that Doug ultimately decided to stay in Cedar Falls. Really easy to see why, Illinois, was very interested, not just in Doug Schwab, but also Tony Ramos, also Mark Branch. And obviously we talked about what Poeta is ultimately going to bring to the position. Lots of unique candidates there, but each of them with, a pedigree of their own that, totally makes sense why Illinois was kind of intrigued by those four guys for sure.
And so last week for InterMat, I kind of went in depth on, what the job kind of entails. And one of the things I was looking at is the athletic director, and he's been there maybe 4 or 5 years. And, I don't know, being in Big Ten country, you may have a better pulse. He has an interesting football hire. The basketball program's kind of on the upswing, with a hire of his own. Some of the other programs that, he's really taken an interest in, getting the unique, good, right candidates in the job for all of the coaching positions. So you have to kind of feel good about where the administration is and, getting Poeta as their guy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, at a spot like Illinois where, they've had success. I know that the Big Ten has kind of been run by, Penn State, Iowa, Ohio State, even. You have Nebraska up there that's been very, very competitive in recent years. Purdue was really good a few years ago. Michigan State and Michigan are obviously in that conversation as well in recent years. But, Illinois is a program that, not long ago, I think it was 2005, Poeta would have been a freshman, that they were Big Ten champs, right? So, this is a program that has routinely churned out, high-level guys, Jesse Delgado, NCAA champion, Isaiah Martinez, NCAA champion. They've had tons of other great wrestlers like Mike Poeta, like Jordan Blanton, and they still have a handful of really good wrestlers there that are going to be, in the lineup. Lucas Bird, very, very impressive this past year. The Baronagles are both going to be there. Luke Luffman at heavyweight, tremendous season out of him at a very, very stacked weight class. So, the fact that you're able to bring in a guy like Mike Poeta, who, and, we talked about on the recruiting trail too, they're bringing in a stud out of California, Maximo Renteria, who, that's a top 30 recruit, I'm pretty sure, in this current senior class. And I know he's super excited. He took to social media to show his excitement over the fact that Poeta got the job. So, I think, as a program, you want to see that, but also, I think it kind of makes sense then, with all this excitement around Poeta, why the administration ultimately decided to go with him. And there's something to the idea of having a new AD there. And, Jim Heffernan, new-ish, I guess, when you look at, how long Jim Heffernan was there, right? Just, decades there in that position. This new AD wants to get, not just his guy installed in the spot, but the right guy installed in the spot. And I think he hit the nail on the head, checking both of those boxes with a guy like Mike Poeta.
So one of the things that I like to ask new coaches whenever they're hired, and I'll probably ask Mike whenever I talk to him, is kind of, what's maybe job number one as far as, for you to achieve your goals, what do you have to change or improve on, but if we had to ask you for Illinois to get over that hump, and you mentioned all the teams are kind of lumped around, beneath the Iowa, Penn State, Ohio State tier. What do they need to improve on? What does Mike need to do kind of first on his list to get over that hump?
Yeah, I think, when I think of Illinois, I think of, just a lot of the high school talent that's in that state, right? And, when you mention that, right, it kind of opens up the conversation a little bit about why they were maybe looking at a guy like Doug Schwab, who's done a tremendous job here at Northern Iowa, keeping the kids, the really good wrestlers in state, right? And it makes sense why they were looking at a guy like Tony Ramos, who, he went to Glenbard North. He's an Illinois guy through and through. He pulled Austin O'Connor from Illinois down to Chapel Hill, and that dude won an NCAA title this year. I think, if you're Mike Poeta, and he knows this well, because you kind of see it a little bit there in the lineup, it's keeping those Illinois guys in the state, at Illinois, at the state's flagship school, right? When we go to Fargo every year, we go to the junior national duels, or we go to the cadet or the 16U national duels, right? Illinois dominates. They dominate in Greco. They dominate in freestyle. They've had a ton of really, really good high school wrestlers come out, a lot of top tier recruits that can compete on that national level, the guys that find a way, they translate over to the collegiate level. I don't want to say seamlessly, but you see a lot of Illinois guys competing at the highest levels of wrestling. And so, and we're seeing some of that a little bit when you kind of look at the lineup a little bit. The Baronagles, for example, we mentioned both of them. They're both from the state of Illinois. There's guys up and down their lineup. Dylan Duncan's a guy, he was a redshirt senior this year. If he comes back, that's an Illinois guy. He's from Montini. Lots of really good programs in and around the state of Illinois. I think, his first goal, or maybe this is kind of a continuation of what he's already been doing, right, is keeping those, superstar Illinois wrestlers in the state of Illinois, and not just in the state of Illinois, because there's multiple Division I programs there, but bringing them to Champaign and really, really building that program back up. If they're able to do that, it wouldn't shock me at all to kind of see them climb the Big Ten ladder a little bit. And, maybe they crack the top 5 in a few years if they're able to keep some of these guys in state. I think that absolutely has to be the top priority.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the depth of talent in Illinois high school wise. It's almost, there is so much where you can't necessarily keep everybody home. So, I guess it's for him identifying those right guys and keeping them home, because you're never going to keep all the Illinois kids or all the Ohio kids in Ohio or Pennsylvania. There's just too many options and too many good kids.
Yeah, well, and you look at, I mean, one of the other things too that'll help them a little bit is, just the development of some of the guys that are in the room. We've mentioned the Bronicles, but Luke Luffman, from last year to this season, I mean, tremendous development from that guy at a really tough heavyweight class. That's gonna stick with guys who are in state and who kind of look, hey, where should I go? Where do I think I'm going to get better? Illinois can point to some of these guys in the room already and say, hey, these guys came here, they got better, they contended on the best of the best when it comes to Division I wrestling. That's going to be a huge selling point when it comes to trying to keep not just any guys from the state of Illinois, but some of the best guys in the state of Illinois, to try to keep them home and bring them to Champaign for sure.
The last thing I have for you, Cody, it's super, super early in this whole process. Any guesses or any educated guesses, any ideas for how the coaching staff rounds out?
I was actually thinking about that right before we hopped on this video here, because you look at Mike Poeta is now the head coach. They have an assistant there in Jeremy Hunter. They have a couple of volunteer assistants there with Travis Petrowski and Zane Richards. I know Brian Medlin is serving as the director of operations. Maybe you bump him up. Maybe you bring some other volunteer assistant around there to Illinois. Hey, maybe, ask Tony Ramos if he wants to be the, associate head coach at Illinois in his home state. Maybe that's intriguing. Or, I know they're doing some really, really good things down there in Chapel Hill, so it might be kind of hard to pull him away. But, there's a lot of options there in terms of, who do you want to bring in? Isaiah Martinez is now out at Oregon State. I know he's been there for a short amount of time. Maybe that's a guy you talk to, maybe bring him back. Stanford coaching staff, as far as we know, is kind of available now. So maybe you try to pull one of those guys in, and that might help you when it comes to the transfer portal. There's a lot of options here if he wants to, fill that second second assistant coaching vacancy. Or maybe you bump up, either Richards or Petrowski to, full-time assistant. If those guys feel like their competitive career might be, close to the end, you can start paying those guys full-time to help with some of the lighter weights, right? Renteria is coming in. He's, I think, going to slot somewhere between 25 and 41. I imagine he's probably going to love rolling with guys like that. So a lot of options here. I don't know that I could give an educated guess yet, but I know that they're probably going to cast a wide net for that too. And it's an enticing landing spot, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some good names, some ideas I hadn't necessarily thought of. So thanks for joining us on such short notice, Cody. And we look forward to more of this in the future, and seeing your great work on InterMat as well as the Des Moines Register.
I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to get started.
All right. Take care.